Welcome to Screencast Chapter 1, Number 4. This screencast will focus on a concept called the ecological footprint. An ecological footprint is a measure of how much a person consumes, and it's expressed in an area of land. So let's look at some of the things that we consume. We consume food, right? So cropland. And that land can be measured in the amount of area of land. So depending how much you eat and whether it's meat or grain, that will change the amount of area of land that's needed to support what you as an individual consume. Settlements or housing is another type of consumption, and again it's expressed in area of land. Maybe you live on let's say an acre of land, then that's how much land you consume for your settlement, for your housing. Maybe you live in an apartment building, especially a very tall apartment building. So the amount that you consume for settlement, for human habitation expressed in area of land would be much smaller. Another example is timber and paper. If you predominantly use electronic devices, say to conduct your schoolwork, you will use less paper, less timber than a person who prefers paper. Excuse me. Seafood, I would put in with food, but since different countries consume different amounts of seafood, that's another area to consider. And last is energy. So you need energy for your home, electricity, heating. You need energy for transportation, whether it's an individual car or taking public transportation. So the amount of energy that you consume contributes to your ecological footprint, because that energy has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is measured in an area of land. So when you put it all together, you get an ecological footprint. Footprint, like a footprint in the sand, means the impact you have on planet Earth based on your consumption. So an ecological footprint may also be expressed in sediment in area of land, in number of Earths. So if everyone on the Earth lived your particular lifestyle, how many Earths or portions of an Earth would be required to support that lifestyle? So let's look at that on the next slide. So an ecological footprint, if everyone lived on Earth the same way you did, would it take one Earth to provide all of your resource needs? Would it take half an Earth to provide all of your resource needs? Or would it take more than one Earth to support your current resource use? So globally, a little heads up, the present-day footprint of the human global population is approximately one Earth. So approximately, if everyone's resource use was combined together, we have enough resources to maintain the current status quo as is. But we could look at ecological footprints differently. And here we are looking at the global population if everyone lived the average U.S. lifestyle. And you can see here that it would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more Earths to support the global population if everyone lived the way the average U.S. citizen lived. So the exercise or the assignment that you have is to find out what your ecological footprint is. I'd like you to first consider what you think it might be based on your behaviors. And then I'd like you to take the ecological footprint quiz that I've attached on Moodle, and it's also available through the link on your textbook, to determine your actual ecological footprint. After you've done that, I would like you to send me an email I've changed it to a Dropbox, to send me a document, a paragraph, written up in Word and uploaded into the Dropbox on Moodle. That tells me what your ecological footprint is, the number of Earths, the number of acres that would be needed, and maybe even your carbon footprint. And then I'd like you to reflect on it further. Is that what you thought your results would be? Are you surprised? What do you think might have contributed to the results that you received? Do you think it's accurate at all or in part? And if you accept to at least some degree what your results are, where are the areas where you might be able to improve or reduce your ecological footprint? I will warn you in advance, your actual ecological footprint will likely be higher than you think it will be. And some of those factors are out of your control. So we'll discuss them during class time. What's accurate, what's held against you, what's inborn into the footprint quiz that may be beyond your control, and what things you might be able to control. So these things we will share during class time. Now I'd like to take a look at ecological footprints again between a global population or developing countries and developed countries. And this lower graphic is in your textbook. This upper one I've added in from Miller, so we will take a look at that in a minute. So first we're showing time from 1961 to current times and then projected into the future. And on this axis, we're looking at the number of Earths that are required to support human populations, so the ecological footprint. And you can see that globally, in 1961, which is not really that long ago, I was born before that, you can see that only half of the Earth's resources were needed to support that population. But as time went by, the number increased and increased, and we are moving into unsustainable living. And we need to do something to change that to make it into a sustainable living below one Earth. Now, this chart up here shows a couple of different things. Let's start on the right. That's per capita ecological footprint. So that means per person footprint, and it's measured in area of land. This says hectares per person. We have in the United States a unit we call acres. Globally, the metric measurement is hectare acres. A hectare acre is 2.2 of an American or U.S. acre. So it's about twice as much. In the United States, we use approximately 10 hectare acres, which would be about 20 acres, to support our lifestyle. The European Union, which still has a developed lifestyle, a developed economy, uses about half, or requires about half, the amount of land to support their lifestyle, even though their lifestyle is fairly comparable to ours. Some developing countries, which include China and India, have even less, far less. Now, it's true there are portions of China and cities in India that are developed, but this looks at the country as a whole. And more people are in areas that are still rural and developing than there are people in the developed areas. So this looks at the country overall. And by the way, the United States, it doesn't matter here anyway because this is per capita or per person, but China takes up about the same amount of physical geography as the United States, and yet has a much lower per capita footprint. India even lower. Japan is a developed country, similar to the European Union and the United States, and they have a footprint that's similar to the European Union. So I think that's fairly understandable that we will look when we go through the class meetings at why does the United States have double the imprint or footprint than the European Union and Japan. And further, is it possible for us to reduce our footprint to levels such as the European Union and Japan have? On the left side here, we have total ecological footprint and share of global ecological capacity. So, different term. Here it was per capita or per person. Here it's total footprint. So if you have a larger population, even if they are per person using less resources, if you have a lot more people, then your total ecological footprint will be higher. So here we see the United States, and because of a combination of factors, we still lead the resource use in total ecological footprint. We use 25% of the world's ecological capacity. But you can see that the European Union has creeped up closer to our numbers, and that's because they have more people in that same area of land, or that same total. China has also moved up significantly. China's population and India's population far exceed the population of the United States. So even though China's per capita ecological footprint is relatively small, they have so many more people that, relatively speaking, their total footprint increases relative to the United States. Same with India. And Japan, it actually decreases. So that's it for the concept of ecological footprint. And we'll move on to the next section, which is the scientific method.